Hey, my name is Abbie Stone, and this is my final project for lifespan development. The first topic I want to go over would be the topic of spanking. The belief that I had was that spanking was a proper form of punishment or a good form of discipline. The reason I believed that was because I was spanked as a kid. My friends were spanked as a kid. Most people spanked their kids where I was from. So I saw it everywhere I went. Of course, I thought it was normal. As I matured, I noticed that it had no effects on my sisters, but I had detrimental side effects due to that form of discipline. I found that corporal punishment led to aggression, antisocial behavior. It led to higher forms of higher risks of depression and anxiety. I also found that spanking affects the same portion of your brain that severe physical and sexual abuse affects. Corporal punishment is an overly aggressive form of discipline. Used in scarcity, it can be okay, but because it's abused so often, I cannot see myself spanking my kids at all. I now believe that corporal punishment can be harmful and have detrimental side effects on a kid. It can make them aggressive. I think that as a society, we have surpassed spanking and that it should really be left in the past where it belongs. The second topic that I chose to do would be sex education. Coming from a conservative religious background, I never really had the sex education talk. I wasn't really educated on anything sexual. Whenever sex was referred to or brought up, it was supposed to be seen as scary and feared, instead of a natural event that's normal and that is desired by most people. Sex was perceived as trashy in my family outside of marriage. I was shown pictures of STDs to try and scare me away from having sex instead of educating me on the importance of safe sex. I was forced to suppress any sexual desires I had, leading to sexual identity problems later on in life. I've learned that having a sexual education discussion is not going to make a child have sex sooner. Getting aggressive with children whenever they are exploring their sexual identity or their sexuality will lead to guilt and shame later on in life or even in that moment. It's crucial to have a sex talk with your kids because in order for a child to have a full understanding of sexual behavior, they need to have that talk. Truth findings and new beliefs I have found having a sex ed discussion with your kid is not only normal, but is encouraged. I believe it's important to teach your child that sexual safety is a natural process. I'm sorry, that's my dog. Charlie. If you're religious, instead of scaring the child, touch on why virginity is important. And explain why they should abstain instead of trying to scare them away from it. It would be better for a kid to be smart, educated on safe sex, but also want themselves to abstain because of their religious practices instead of scaring them away but not educating them on anything about it. The third topic I chose would be promoting obesity and proportion control. I used to believe that overeating was a sign of a growing child. I come from a very southern family. I remember being called to a nightly dinner and walking into a delicious plate of food loaded sky high, I was growing and I needed to eat, of course, and I was going to, definitely. But coming from a Southern Baptist family, you got to know how to love God and you got to know how to use casserole dish. Proportion control has always been an issue of mine because I was never shown as a kid what proportions look like. Unfortunately, even though it was some good cooking, I was not able to have that model in my life or reference to look back to. Obesity in children age 6 to 11 is 18.4%, and it goes up to 20.6% at the ages of 12 to 19. I had no reference as to what proper portions look like as a child, aiding to my misconception of how full a plate should actually be. Truth findings and new beliefs. I found through my research that it's important to give a child a visualization on what a proper proportion sizing is. I now believe it's a good idea to start teaching your child healthy habits at a young age. That way they don't struggle with eating later on in life. The fourth topic I chose to do would be aggression through impression. This topic is interesting, I found, because of the way I used to perceive it and now how I do. I knew that children learned aggression. I knew children learned behaviors through watching, but I never really realized that aggression was learned through imitation so often, or how a child watches you hit someone else and they immediately go and hit someone else. So it's like taking out aggression with aggression. I knew that children learn by watching, but I thought children were mainly aggressive because they felt insecure or were being bullied or just bottled up emotions. I was surprised to see how much aggression is learned through impressions. As I got older, I realized that a lot of my aggression came from bottled up emotions or being bullied as a kid, and I guess I just assumed that that's how most aggression came about instead of looking at the full picture or studying the topic. So I guess I would say the reason I believed it would be that I was uneducated on it. What I learned through research, though, I found the process of modeling children. I found through the process of modeling, children will imitate aggression they see acted out in front of them. I also found that violent media often leads to violence later on and aggressive behavior. Modeling is a positive way. Modeling in a positive way is important for children to see. They need to have a positive influence about. So some tips for positive influencing and positive modeling would be to surround your child with positivity, limit negative influences, notice positives that your children have and make sure you tell them, make sure they know that you're noticing. Talk with your kid. It's important to communicate. It's always important to communicate. And do what you say and say what you do. It's important to say your word and then act on your word so they don't believe in false promises. It's important that they grow up knowing people are going to say what they're going to do, or people are going to do what they're going to say, my bad. They look up to their parents the most, so the parents are the most influential and need to be the best impression. I found that children definitely learn aggression through impressions, and I now believe it's not only important, but it's imperative that you're a positive role model for your child. And so my final topic that I chose to go over would be the goodness of fit parenting. I found this was one really interesting because of personal experiences that I've gone through. My belief would be that parenting is tailored to how the child, my belief would be that parenting is tailored to how the parents see fit, rather than the temperament of the child. Why I believe that would be growing up with two sisters. My parents, we all were parented the same way. There was no change. And even though it worked for my older sister, it had bad side effects on me. They were negative side effects that came about. I grew up thinking parenting was done without taking into account the child's feelings because the parents know best, which they do. And honestly, this one's hard for me because I did grow up with parents that treated all three of us the same way, and my sister was very aggressive, and my sister was very wild, I guess you could say, and I was very calm and collected and insecure in a way, and so my parents would discipline my sister with aggression and then turn around and discipline me, and that left me with a lot of anxiety later on in life. What I learned from my research would be that every child requires a different parenting style, or not a different parenting style, but they all require different things, and they can't be fulfilled all through the same parenting style. Goodness of fit parenting takes every factor into account and creates the perfect parenting style for your children, the best parenting style. Having all your tools in your toolbox is extremely important, but you can't use a screwdriver on a nail. So being sensitive to a child's needs and the temperament can produce a positive outcome later on in life. I found that using different methods through Goodness of Fit Parenting provides a solid foundation for children and their mental health later on in life. It also improves their long-term outcome and their behaviors. I now believe that it is important to base your parenting style off the child instead of brushing it off and saying, well, it worked on our other kid. I think it's really important that you adjust your parenting to the temperament of the child so that they get the best parenting that you can give. And so that was my project, my video diary. Signing off. This is Abbie Stone. Thank you so much.